Sooner Nation, OU Insider subscribers, Coach Brian Clinton enthusiasts, OU fans who are maybe feeling a little bit more optimistic about everything as a whole with the athletics department, given some recent developments that we will dive into on this episode of the Oklahoma Drill. This is a podcast for you. My name is Jesse Crittenden, and I am joined, as always, by Coach, Sir Brian Clinton. Brian, how are you, sir?
Good. I'm good. I'm hanging in there.
You told me you have a dental proceeding tomorrow?
I was about to get into that. I have been dealing with what started as a sinus infection over in this area, and it's been miserable. Every night this week, dating back to Saturday night, been up at 1 a.m. and pretty much not gone back to sleep after that. It's been terrible. So, dentist appointment tomorrow. Getting rid of some issues over here on this side, and we'll see if that helps. So, I did not know sinuses and teeth shared nerves. Now I know that. I wish I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But now I know that.
Not an ideal way to find out about that. I'm embarrassed. Well, at least you're going to the dentist. I don't even want to say how long it's been since I've gone to the dentist, which is particularly embarrassing because my father is a dentist.
Oh, okay. That makes it worse. I haven't been to the dentist probably 5 years.
That's been about, I think, pre-COVID.
That's yeah. It's bad. It's bad.
Go to the
dentist, people.
I'm going in June, and I booked the appointment like a month ago. For the earliest they could get me in was June.
And you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. Goodness. Well, Brian, there's a couple of different reasons why Oklahoma fans could feel a little bit more optimistic. I mean, softball's playing pretty well, as we'll get into here in a little bit. Baseball, great start to the year. Men's basketball, back in the NCAA tournament field projections. Women's basketball projected to be a top 4 seed. All kinds of stuff. But main thing we need to talk about is the news that dropped today concerning the football program, and that is Jim Nagy has been hired as the new GM for the football program. And look, it's for one, I know Curtis Lofton he did have the role for a few months, but this in some ways kind of feels like the first real GM for this program. And that's not disrespect to Curtis. It's just where Oklahoma is now with the way different programs have gone about things over the last few months. This feels like a real official stamp as a GM. And part of that is because of his pedigree. And I mean, he has spent since 2018 as the executive director for the Senior Bowl. Before that, almost 20 years of NFL front office experience, primarily as a scout for the Chiefs, the Seahawks, the Patriots. It's just, I'll give my thoughts in a second, but it's a huge hire, Brian. It is a humongous hire. But you tell me, what was your reaction to this, and just what does this mean for this program?
Well, whenever it went public this morning, my initial response was, holy cow. And then after it set in for a bit, I texted our colleague Brandon and said, I don't understand how this isn't blowing the internet up yet, because this is a huge deal. And then, of course, 10 minutes later, it starts circulating, and it blows up. This is a monumental hire, absolute home run hire. I don't think, as far as what is available out there, regardless of who's available, for a role of this particular element, I think Jim Nagy was the perfect fit. This is a guy that you have to value player evaluation, talent acquisition, roster building, like all of that stuff that is important, more important now than it's ever been in college football, more like the professional model than it's ever been in college football. A guy with that much experience at the next level, for him to be able to step in, create his own team of assistants, and be in charge of that portion of Oklahoma's football program, it's huge. I really don't think it can be overstated. This is a huge win for Brent Venables. This is a huge win for the Sooners program as a whole. And, quite frankly, I think this is something that it really paints a picture, at least in my mind, paints a picture that although there is a lot going into the 2025 season, this is a kind of move that feels as if the staff and the decision makers at Oklahoma feel like there's concrete evidence of success to come. It feels like they are planning for the long haul. So big time win. Huge hire.
I'm glad you said that last part, because I think, and then there's a lot of ways you can discuss this hire, but to me, this extends far beyond trying to save the program this next year. This is a move you make regardless of coach, regardless of past success or past failures. This is a move you make hoping this dictates the direction of your football program for the next 10 to 20 years.
Yep.
That's what this is. And to be honest, I think it was Max Olson with The Athletic. I think it was who tweeted this. He said he said Nagy's a bit overqualified. I think that's putting it nicely.
Lightly. Yeah.
To get him, and he's not a 10-time Super Bowl winning, it's not because of that. It's because this dude slots in immediately with obvious, tangible paths to building this program and pushing it forward into an NFL style front office, which is what this program wants to do.
Right.
And I mean, with 25 years of contacts, and player evaluation, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, he comes in and checks every box. And not only checks every box, he checks it with decades of experience and
Sharpie
success. Yes. Yeah. And to me, it's not gutsy in the sense that this is risky, because it's not, but this is a hell of a statement by Joe Castiglione.
Yep.
And this athletic department, this university. I mean, the number one criticism, and in some ways justified criticism, is OU lagging behind the 8 ball a little bit when it comes to NIL, or when it comes to modernizing, adapting to the current college football landscape. You really can't. In one move, it kind of tears all of that down. It's basically a way of saying, oh yeah, we're not doing enough.
Yeah.
Look at this hire.
Right.
I mean, that's not to say past criticisms weren't warranted or that future criticisms won't be warranted, but I mean, to me, Brian, I'll throw it back to you. This is the best way I can say it. As much as a new offensive coordinator was needed, and as much as getting Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator would have been huge, this feels, in terms of this season and beyond, this feels like a bigger deal to me.
Yes.
That's what
Agreed.
I would say.
I 100% agree. It's the modern age of college football. In the modern age of college football, we have seen more changes over the last 5 years than we have at any other point in our lifetime. I mean, there has been, you and I mean, I'm approaching 30. I'll be 30 in a few months. And that's crazy.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, there are so many things, monumental changes to college football that we've witnessed in the last half decade. NIL, the transfer portal becoming what it is now, We're moving towards the revenue sharing model this summer, where and pretty much everything goes in house. We're looking at the college football playoff changing formats again. Like there's just so much, and all of this is moving more and more towards the professional model. Everything is moving closer and closer in line with what the NFL does. Now, I will say, even there's detractors for college football, there's detractors for the NFL. The NFL product and model works. It is a proven, consistent model. And I think it's wise for college football to be moving that direction with everything that's going on. And for Oklahoma to go out and grab a guy that is as cemented as he is in that part of the game, in the off-field part of football, is huge. I mean, there is not a more qualified guy out there in terms of acquiring talent, seeing talent transition than this guy. I mean, the Reese's Senior Bowl, it doesn't get as much public hype as like a game that counts for wins and losses, just because it's viewed in a different light. But for scouts, for guys making the jump from college to the NFL, it became the premier college all-star game. It did. And that has a lot to do with what Jim Nagy did as the executive there. So I look at this as a potential, not just a statement, but like a foundational part of the transition from where this program was headed, or maybe where it had plateaued at prior to Brent Venables' arrival, and now maybe gives them something to look at as a building block, if that makes sense. Because football, yes, wins and losses is ultimately what you're going to be judged by naturally in the sport. But there is so much more. I mean, you and I both know there is so much more that goes into this at this point than the final on the scoreboard. There's a lot that goes on off the field, and having a guy like Jim Nagy that knows that right next to Brent Venables, it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Well, and let's talk about what this kind of means, what this kind of looks like moving forward, because I mean, general manager now, again, this is kind of a new movement, a new phenomenon in college football, is a pretty broad catch-all term. But basically, I mean, it's him taking the lead on NIL. It's him taking the lead on the revenue sharing model, if and when, likely when it comes. It's taking the lead on portal evaluations. I'm curious to see what it even means for recruiting, for high school recruiting.
Yep.
But it basically takes a lot of the really big picture things off of Brent Venables' plate. And it means, I mean, and obviously they'll be working a lot together, but I mean, there's going to be an assistant GM. I'm curious about how many people are going to be working for Nagy. But there's he's going to have a staff basically that he's going to delegate all of these different things to. And really outside of NIL, which I'm not saying he hasn't had anything to do with that. It's just that's probably the thing out of all of his new responsibilities he's less familiar with. He's equipped to handle all of that. He's equipped to delegate things. He's worked as a part of front offices. He's been the executive director for the Senior Bowl. So he knows how to work within a staff. He knows how to lead a staff. And really, again, this is you're basically bringing in someone very experienced, not only very experienced, but wants to do this. I think that ended up being the downside for Curtis Lofton, which, hey, I get it. If you're not with the trends of college football, you shouldn't be a part of it. And I don't blame you if you don't want to be a part of it. But this is the way things are going. And Jim Nagy's been a part of it. I mean, even being the Senior Bowl executive director, he's seen the trends and way this is going. He's coming to Oklahoma because he wants to be on the front line of this. And I think that's the bigger overall point to me, Brian, is if your criticism, and I think rightfully so, about Oklahoma potentially falling behind, you've now got a guy in that I think you can say might be responsible for helping Oklahoma lead the charge as it comes to this new era of college football. And as you mentioned, this new era of kind of NFL front office style movements. I mean, everybody would want Nagy, who I thought was probably more likely to take an NFL job and hell, maybe even an NFL GM job.
Yes.
Than he was to stay in college football.
Yeah.
Everybody would want Nagy. Everybody would want him.
Yeah. And, you look at it from the perspective of there's really no doubt in my mind that he would be successful as an NFL GM just with what he's done. So for Oklahoma to land a guy like that is just kind of like icing on top. But what this does, and you kind of mentioned it there at the beginning, portal acquisitions and evaluating those guys. It's what he's done. I mean, this is literally his job for the last 5 years at the Senior Bowl, was to make sure that guys who had the talent, the ability to play in the NFL, whether or not they were going to get the recognition because of the schools that they played for, he made sure that guys showed up. I mean, how often it became a regular occurrence in January on Twitter, some guy from D3 wherever is going viral on Twitter for burning an SEC corner or dominating an SEC defensive lineman. And they're like, who the heck is this guy? Well, like, it was Nagy who found those guys. Like that's what he was responsible for. So for Oklahoma, one, you have a guy that can go out there and find those sorts of players, somebody that can see it immediately, because evaluation is it's a huge part of the game that doesn't get talked about. That's also important in the sense that you are looking at a high school kid and trying to see what's he going to look like, what he develops, what are his goals. Maybe, in recent years, Oklahoma may not have been on the top of the pile if a guy's main goal was to go to the NFL for one reason or another. Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, those are the kinds of schools that Oklahoma would lose recruiting battles to. And their pedigree for the NFL in certain positions has been better. Nagy has seen it, done it, been there in all senses of the word. And I think that that's going to play very well. Like the boon that Oklahoma should have in recruiting, and not just that, but the support that Oklahoma has from an NIL standpoint from its boosters. I think this is like the stamp of approval. Oklahoma's going all in. Like let's help them get there. It feels, like I said, like a statement hire and somebody that Oklahoma is going all in.
You kind of said it. It's Oklahoma going all in, and the whole purpose of a general manager is to help stabilize things. It's to help organize things. It's the stereotypical corporate organizational flowchart.
Yes,
where you start with, in the NFL you got the owner, and then you got the GM. Which in college football you've got Joe Castiglione. For OU you got Joe Castiglione, and now you've got, it used to just be Brent or your head coach basically handle everything.
Yep.
You're handling, you're handling not only X's and O's and roster management, your current roster, it's high school evaluation and recruiting, it's transfer portal evaluation and recruiting. And over the last couple of years, a lot of it had been NIL negotiation.
Yeah.
that is just so much to put on a guy that you're also expecting to go out and lead you to success in the hardest conference in college football. Now you've got a guy, and you don't just have a guy, you have maybe the guy to help organize all of that. And now you have somebody that kind of can work with Brent Venables, but to set the program goals, to set program, I don't know what you call it, program, you wish list, program targets, whatever, and then have somebody experienced and can delegate other people to go do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Here's the other, and this is the last thing I'll say. When you think about, look, Brent Venables wanted Ben Arbuckle. They got Ben Arbuckle. Brent Venables wanted John Mateer. They got John Mateer. They wanted Jim Knowles. Didn't get Jim Knowles, but tried very hard to get Jim Knowles.
Yep.
And now you've got probably the best GM hire that any program has made and is likely to make as more and more teams do this. This was a move that is not only to go all in for this year, it's to go all in for the long haul. This is to set the standard of how things are going to operate moving forward for the next 5, 10, 15 years. But now if you're Brent Venables, you've gotten a lot of help.
Yep.
And I think it's twofold. One, from a expectation standpoint, or from a this season specifically standpoint, you've gotten a lot of help. You're more free than you've ever been to focus on the field. And then two, I think if you're a fan, if Brent Venables is fired at some point, that likely means everything fell apart. Yeah. And that wouldn't be easy to fix. But right. I think this helps gear him towards more success. And if so, maybe that helps. And then if not, if things still fall apart this year, I think this insulates the program a little bit from how catastrophic the fallout would be or could be if things fall apart this year. I think that's my other big takeaway.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm just going to add real quick. I think it's important. Something that's probably not talked about enough, and you hinted at it, and I'm just going to piggyback off of it. Perhaps the biggest benefit of all of this that's not being talked about is Brent Venables being able to be a football coach again, because we've heard it not just from this staff. It's been industry wide. College football coaches all over the country, all throughout Division I, regardless of what conference they play in, they're spending more time now doing things outside of being a football coach than ever before. And it's not a coincidence that this has all started and you see guys like Nick Saban step to the side and hear rumors of other huge names stepping out of the game. Freeing Brent Venables up to do what he does best presents Oklahoma with its best opportunity to have success now and going forward. And by getting a guy of Nagy's stature, you have done that and then some. So it really does free Venables up, and I think that's just a major positive.
I think the last note is, my guess would be he'll make probably close to 7 figures, definitely high 6 figures.
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming his contract will be finalized at the next Board of Regents meeting next month. Man, there's going to be a lot of things to watch at that Board of Regents meeting. It's not just this contract. It's also, do any of the other assistants get raises? Because none of them did in January.
Right.
Especially with the DeMarco news or with the off-season rumor stuff. Really curious what that looks like, because this could look, college football GMs could end up being almost as enticing as an NFL GM, and we could look 10 years from now and think, well, there's actually some appeal for some people to actually go be a GM in college football as opposed to the NFL. But for right now, he probably could have shot higher.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious exactly how strong this pitch to get him was.
Yeah, it had to have been. Yeah, you nailed it. It had to have been. This is like that typical Godfather move from Joe C of old, So it's really interesting. I don't know how they did it, but OU fans are really glad they did.
We were going to talk about spring football, which is March 6th.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that next week. We'll talk about spring football next week because this was a big hire.
Punt it.
Yep. And also, we'll probably have newcomer media day next week too. That's what the expectation is. So we'll have more football to talk about next week and in the coming weeks. But for now, we need to talk about some softball, the 14-0 softball team. But before we do that, let's take a little bit of a break. Then we'll talk about softball for a little bit. Brian, let's talk about some softball. This is a team that made their home debut this past weekend to host the Norman tournament. They went 4-0. That's right. Right? They went 4-0. Yeah. Yep. I don't know why I was blanking on that. Couple of, pretty easy routine victories that you would expect. They beat the hell out of Tulsa, beat the hell out of Wichita State. Then almost got upset against Bowling Green. And then even in the Abilene Christian game, pretty slow start in that game too. I mean, they were trailing going into the bottom of the third inning, but still perfect on the season. I was at those games this weekend. It was fun to see this team in person. Different vibe to this team, just from what you would expect. They have I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just it's a different vibe. It's a different atmosphere, and I think this team plays differently.
Okay,
and I think you got that. I think you saw that as well. Even that Abilene Christian game, you saw this team make the adjustment. I mean, they couldn't buy any offense in the first two innings, and then the third inning they start doing a lot more hit and run, aggressive base running tactics. You see the offense kind of go. I mean, Alana Abiyani stole 4 bases on Monday across the 2 games. I think you saw more of that. I think you're seeing a lot more tinkering, and also Patty, she said on Saturday or it was Saturday or Sunday after the Wichita State game, she actually said, because that game wasn't a run rule, she actually said this team is really trying to find something right now. And I think that's the better way to put what I'm trying to say, is that I think I got the sense that, you're 14-0. It's really impressive. There's a lot of things to be excited about, but you could tell this was a young team that I think it needs a lot of growth. And I think you saw a lot of coaching this week. What stood out to you about this weekend?
Well, it's hard to glean from a lot from just the competition from that standpoint. So you don't really know what to take from it statistically, but I still think you're looking at a player in Ella Parker that is just playing out of her mind.
Goodness.
Isabella Smith is still incredible. Has continued to be. Sam Landry, I think is coming into her own and really playing well. The more experience that she gets, I look at this team from top to bottom. And I think that we're starting to see more of an identity. Just as the year goes along, we're still only 14 games in, and still a lot of season left. But it does feel as if this team is starting to realize who they are and like where they need to work. And I like that. That quote from Patty that you just said, they're trying to find something. It's you can see that this team, the youth of this team, is both its strength and its weakness. And what I mean by that is the inexperience there is going to play a role in some way, in some learning process whenever they hit SEC play. It's going to be tough. Like SEC play is going to be tough. You can't start the way that you did against Abilene Christian offensively against a team like Arkansas or Tennessee or whoever it is.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I think that the work ethic and those things that Patty keeps pointing back to, it's such a crazy reminder of how young the team is. The fact that they have something to prove. There's not, there's not this preconceived notion that Oklahoma is going to just win another national championship like there has been the last several years. This team really feels as if they have something to prove, and maybe that's the difference in the feeling for this team. That it is more to me, Jesse. And again, I haven't seen it in person yet, but at least from what you can see on screen, it feels as if there's even more of a blue collar mentality to what's going on. Like, not to say that the previous teams weren't working their tails off. They were. Like, you don't achieve that kind of success without being incredibly committed to your craft. But this team feels as if it feels like they really pride themselves on that work ethic right now. And that, I think, is a great thing, especially for how young they are.
This also just, I think I was talking about it with a couple of people over the weekend. This also just kind of feels like a normal team, and that's kind of a good thing, I think. I mean, even when you look at the stats, I mean, over the last several years, it's so many players hitting above 400, right? Batting average. Yeah. Not the case this year. Ella Parker has been insane, still batting .610 on the year, an on-base percentage that's almost 700. I mean, through 3 weekends, she's been insane. Then you look at, like, you're getting really good production from Sydney Sanders. I think we've seen Abigail Dayton the last few games really kind of find her stride. But otherwise, I mean, it's a lot of players sitting in the mid 300s or below. And I do think you're still, I mean, even, Cassidy Pickering, I think that 3-run bomb to end the Bowling Green game was huge. I think Oklahoma needed that game. I mean, they looked a little, I mean, I guess give Bowling Green credit, but also nobody, that was a Bowling Green team that had just been wiped through by Tulsa and Wichita State. It just didn't look very good. Patty kind of said that after the game. I am curious, I mean, because even there's two things I want to hit real quick. And one of them is you're still seeing a lot of lineup tinkering. I mean, even at designated player, you saw, I mean, Tia Malloy did some good stuff in her shift. We saw Ella Parker take that spot again. You're still seeing a lot of movement. I mean, even Maya Bland started the final game on Monday. You're seeing, I mean, Sydney Barker was kind of in and out this weekend at shortstop. I think this team is still really working through stuff like that. And then, and Patty even said they are very aware that next weekend is their last weekend before SEC play starts. They are very aware of that. So I think it's not only about continuing to find an identity, but I think you're going to see a different DP all 5 games this next weekend. I think every game is going to be a different DP. I think you're going to see changes to that outfield spot where Ella Parker's been there. But I think you'll see some differences there. And I think you'll continue to see a lot of changes at shortstop.
Yeah.
And the other thing is Sam Landry has been awesome as a pitcher. She was fantastic. She's been fantastic in both relief and on the mound. Kirsten Dill, the numbers are really good. Her and Audrey Lowry both struggled quite a bit in that Bowling Green game. It was Landry that had to come in after she started the game before, had to come in and close that thing out. So I guess all of that is to say a lot of lineup tinkering. And then I think when it comes to this pitching staff, I think Sam Landry has been, I mean, also Isabella Smith, you mentioned her. She still hasn't given up a run in 18 innings. Insane. But I think Sam Landry is looking like the ace for this team. I wonder how that holds up. Even this weekend, you're going to get a little bit better competition. And I wonder are we seeing Landry be that kind of inning eater? Are we seeing that? Or is this team going to need, Isabel Smith, Deal, Audrey Lowry to really find their groove, or like not find their groove, but continue as the season goes along? Sam Landry's really impressed me, man. She throws heat, man. She really does.
She does. Yep. Yeah, she doubles up everybody else on the staff in strikeouts. And that, like you just said, the heat's where it comes from. That it's I think it's the Rise Bowl is the one that I don't sit here and pretend to know everything about pitching a softball. I've never done it, but it moves to the zone pretty quick. And go ahead.
I muted. There we go. I muted it. It happened this time. Just to quickly add to your point, she even talked about after one of the games over the weekend, she actually mentioned that she's attacking the zone way more aggressively than she used to. She used to be kind of, try to be cute, hit different spots outside the zone. But she said Jen Rocha has really hammered in her to just attack the zone, trust your stuff, trust your defense. Yeah. And, you want to get opponents to swing and miss instead of feel like they can anticipate that you're going to try to trick them. Is basically and I thought that was really interesting because her strikeout numbers through 3 weekends, 46 strikeouts in 28 innings.
Yep.
Yeah,
and I think this is what you've come to expect from players under Jen Rocha. Like she fine tunes players better. She might be as far as finding strengths and making them better. She might be the best at that in college softball. She's done that with, you name the transfer pitcher that's had success and comes to Oklahoma and finds their success at an even higher rate. Yes, you're playing in front of a great defense, but credit to Coach Rocha for that. And yeah, Sam Landry, I think if Oklahoma's going to reach its ceiling, it's going to need Smith and Deal to both continue along, and then obviously Audrey Lowry needs to continue finding success. Nobody on this team is allowing a batting average of 2. They're all in the ones there. So it's not like they're all getting hit a lot, but there are moments, as you mentioned, like in that Bowling Green game, both Deal and Lowry looked out of sorts a little bit. And I think that having somebody like Sam Landry to be able to come in and put things away is great. But those moments, there are going to be moments in the season where that is not necessarily going to be an option. And I think if Oklahoma is going to reach its potential in 25, those two are going to have to come along.
Yeah. And along the lines of lineup tinkering, I thought it looked like they had established kind of a top 4 of Dayton, Parker, Pickering, and Sanders. Dayton was batting in the 9 hole for the last couple of games of the weekend. And so, and like I said, I think Patty said they're very aware that this last weekend is basically their last non-conference tournament, or is their last tournament, not the last non-conference game, last tournament game. I wonder if they're not only going to, I wonder not only if they're going to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see if they can, have a full slate of evidence of a bunch of stuff, before South Carolina next weekend. Mm-hmm. I also wonder, she even said after the game that, this team has still been doing a lot of power hitting, man. A lot of power hitting, which is not what I expected.
Yeah.
They've got 24 home runs on the year. Their opponents have 4.
Yeah.
I think they're in the top 15 in home runs. OU is through 3 weekends. They're 8th.
Yep.
I don't think that's sustainable. I just don't. Other teams, yes. Or other Oklahoma teams, yes. I don't think it is for this team. And she said they're still trying to figure out how to be aggressive base running. She even said she's kind of learning to trust some of their some of the different players' instincts a little bit. Mm-hmm. I wonder, are we going to see that more this weekend? Because again, I don't think they're going to face a ton of stiff competition, but even, they play Kansas a couple of times. I wonder, are we going to see this team try to nail down and treat a couple of these games? I mean, I think they'll experiment a lot, but I wonder if they're going to treat a couple of these games like it is an SEC game, because this coaching staff's not dumb. They're really smart. And while, I think the power hitting will be there, obviously, for players like Ella Parker and Sydney Sanders and Cassidy Pickering. They got to know that that's probably not likely to continue, right? At least not at this pace.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are you watching for this weekend?
Yeah. Like you just said, I think with this being the final weekend, I guess, if you want to call it tune-ups, that's kind of what it is. Kansas is more than capable of upsetting the apple cart. I mean, that's a team, I believe they upended Texas last year, the year before, in a situation that they shouldn't have. Maybe, no, it was Oklahoma State. That's who it was. So this team is more than capable of getting you if you're not. I mean, Bowling Green took Oklahoma to the brink. So, I don't think there's any reason to necessarily be concerned about this weekend if you're an Oklahoma fan going to the game. But I also do think, as you said, there's going to be a lot of things tried, and with so much youth, with so much unknown still. It's going to be paramount to get those things at least somewhat hammered out before, somewhat battle tested. But I think we are going to see whether or not that competitive switch is flipped. I do like that Patty Gasso said that they're very aware that she made it a point that they're very aware this is their last. So, do we see this team kind of lock in? Like we've seen past teams under Coach Gasso do. They really lock in and round into shape at the right time. And I think if they're going to take a step and improve, this weekend would be a big one for them to do that. And then the other thing is just going back to the pitching rotation. I think this is kind of the last weekend to really build out some real momentum and some real confidence for somebody like Audrey Lowry. I think you need to get her in the circle maybe a little bit more this weekend. Let her kind of fill things out because you're going to need more than two arms. You're going to need more than two arms to get through SEC play. And so I think getting her and Kirsten Deal as confident as possible it's going to be something to watch this weekend.
I'm going to give you a player I'm watching this weekend, or I'm going to be watching for this weekend. Then I'm going to ask you to give me player you're watching. Player I'm watching this weekend is I mentioned her already, but it's Alana Agbayani, who has had some good moments through the first three weekends. But I think, I asked her after the game on Sunday about just the acclimation process. I think she's clearly a player you can tell is still getting adjusted. She's also playing a lot of second base. I'll be honest. I knew that was a possibility. I thought she was going to play a lot of short. Mm-hmm. She's been playing a lot of second base. It's kind of the same thing with Isabella Emmerling, who, had a couple of good moments this last weekend, had a home run, but she's batting 176 for the season. On base percentage 364. Alana Agbayani hitting 289 for the season. 429 on base percentage. It's fine. It's not great. Neither of those marks are great. And we saw her, I think towards the end of the weekend, she started to get a little bit more of a rhythm. She's got 6 stolen bases on the season. That's tied for the team lead, I think, with Parker and with Abigail Dayton. There you go. I think she's still trying to find her fitting or her role, and I think in this offense, it's gonna be getting on base. My guess is, just watching these first few weekends, I think it's gonna be a lot of getting on base and then aggressive base running. Yeah, that's gonna be her game. But Oklahoma needs her to hit a little better than 289, which again is still early. but they needed to hit. They needed to hit a little better than that. They needed to get on base a little bit more consistently than she has. Because to me, she's kind of an X factor going into conference play. Who's a player you're watching this weekend?
There's two. I mean, the obvious ones. You got. I mean, Ella Parker's must see TV. So like that goes
She's
without
so
saying.
good, man.
But I think my first one would be Sydney Barker. That's somebody that has kind of become, to me, she's been the most impressive freshman on this team to this point. Sydney Barker has, she had the 6 RBI game against Baylor. Played incredible there. She's 4th on the team or 5th on the team right now on batting average. She's 100 there on slugging percentage. So like she's hitting with power, and I think that as you said, it's probably not sustainable for this team to be one of the top power hitting teams in the country. But if you have Ella Parker, Sydney Sanders, Bella Dayton, and Cassidy Pickering, and then you throw Sydney Barker in there, and those 5 are hitting that way, the sky's the limit. I mean, you really are looking at a team that could hurt you in a lot of ways. And then the back half with McEnroe, Marinas, and Akbanyani, with Malloy, with the speed in that back half of that lineup. I mean, my goodness. You've really got something to work with there. So Barker would be the first one, and then the other one I mentioned her. It was Tia Malloy. That is somebody on both sides, both in the field and at the plate. I think just as she gets more and more up to speed of the college game, I think she's going to be a superstar. I don't know how long it's going to take. I think she's going to play a larger and larger role for this team as the year goes along. But that's somebody this weekend that it wouldn't surprise me to see her take a jump.
I asked Patty about her. I think on Saturday she was the DP, got a couple of hits, and I asked about her, and Patty kind of said she's a player that when she's young and when she's hitting well, she's an energizer. That's kind of the effect she has. Yeah. And I think you see that she's really fast. And yeah, I mean, I think they're experimenting with a lot of these young players right now. She's got 5 starts on the year. If she can kind of hang around, continue to be in the rotation, she's a really interesting player.
Yeah.
She is. She kind of brings something unique.
Yeah.
To this team, So
totally agree.
Going to be a lot of fun. Doubleheader, or they play 5 games this weekend. They start Marshall at 1:45 and Kansas at 4:15 on Friday. I think all those games are ESPN Plus or SEC Network, or one of the two. Check one of those places.
If you got ESPN Plus, you can see it.
Yep, there you go. That's going to do it for us here, Brian, on this episode of the Oklahoma Drill. Appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, make sure to like and subscribe here at this OU Insider YouTube channel, not only for our podcast, our videos, which we usually publish on Thursdays once a week. We're also available wherever you get your podcasts. But for all the content that we're going to have here, we upload post-game availability, interviews from every sport, but that includes softball. We've got every availability from this past weekend up on the YouTube. If you guys want to watch that, we've got all kinds of other podcasts, all kinds of other content. If you're not a VIP member over at OUinsider.com, never a better time to do so with spring practices right around the corner. Appreciate you guys as always. Brian, appreciate you as always. Good luck on your dental stuff.
Appreciate
tomorrow.
That. Let you know how it goes.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys as always. Enjoy the warm weather. We'll see you guys next week on the Oklahoma Drill. Take care.